commonality between all of us. Like you said, some of us are farmers or grew up on farms and some didn't, but there's so many threads that are just common as we're raising our family, as we're cooking meals for our family, as we're going with the ebb and tide of planting and harvest. It doesn't matter what we're planting or, there's just so much that ties all of us together. And the farming community is just amazingly supportive.
Welcome to Illinois Corn TV. My name is Haley Bickelhoff, and I'm the Policy Communications Manager here at Illinois Corn. On this show, we bring you informative ag interviews to position Illinois farmers to grow. We've broken this show up into two parts, so let's get started with part one today. We spoke with Deanne, who's a farmer, a food blogger, and the owner of thisfarmgirlcooks.com. Today on our interview, she talked a lot about field meals and a lot of her recipes helping you stay healthy while you're farming in the spring or in the fall. Now let's go ahead and jump on into the interview. So just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your background and about yourself?
Yeah, I actually grew up in a farm town, but not to a farm family, and honestly didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. I wasn't an FFA or 4-H or anything like that. But I did marry a farmer. And so I've kind of back to where I came from. I live 5 miles from where I grew up and married my husband. And we farm corn and soybeans and have a few beef cattle, 4 kids. I'm kind of learning the ropes about farming. I've learned how to drive a grain cart. And I also make the meals for our crew.
Perfect. And that, making the meals for the crew kind of brings us into why we wanted to have you on today. But can you tell us a little bit more about This Farm Girl Cooks?
Sure. This Farm Girl Cooks, after our daughter Eleanor was born, we decided that I would stay home. I quit my corporate job and stayed to help out. It didn't make sense to have childcare for 3 kids. And so I asked my husband, what can I do to help? Because I really like to have a purpose. And he said, well, you can help by making field meals. And I kind of said, what's a field meal? I didn't know. And he's like, well, it's something like, it was kind of like, well, duh. But he was like, it's something we eat when we can't come in, for a meal, you would bring it to us. So I started doing that and had some serious fails, but kind of started to figure out what worked and what didn't. Then people started asking, I'd post on Facebook on my personal page and people would ask more about the recipes. And that's kind of how This Farm Girl Cooks evolved. That I started that in 2016 and it's been growing ever since.
Wow. So what was that transition like, going from working more of a corporate role to then being really active on the farm, helping out? How is that?
I'm not going to lie. It was a little rough. For one, I didn't have the background, didn't know what a lot of things were or why they did a lot of things. And then just a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? I'm not a real I'm not a farmer. I'm not a farm wife. I just felt like a poser a little bit. But really being open about that fact and asking a lot of questions along the way was really helpful.
Definitely. And now you're a resource for so many people that maybe don't have a farming background or maybe they do. But what's been the most surprising or interesting thing that your audience has approached you with?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's just the commonality between all of us. Like you said, some of us are farmers or grew up on farms and some didn't, but there's so many threads that are just common as we're raising our family, as we're cooking meals for our family, as we're going with the ebb and tide of planting and harvest. It doesn't matter what we're planting or, there's just so much that ties all of us together. And the farming community is just amazingly supportive.
I totally agree. I grew up on a farm myself and obviously now working for the corn growers. It's great to see how everyone really rallies behind each other. And I think that's a cool thing about food too. It's something that brings us together. And kind of going off of that, I know that on your website, it says you grew a love for cooking kind of from your mom. And I think that's so great. I kind of do just as well from my mom. And I know that you have a daughter now in school for ag communications. And so maybe cooking might not be her thing, but communicating agriculture, which is something that you get to do every day, is. And so how has that been correlated to what you do?
Yeah, it's been really fun. Ava is at U of I studying AgCom, and I was a general communications major. And so when she was talking about different avenues to explore, I had kind of said, well, she was involved in FFA and she really did enjoy some of that aspect. So I said, what about like honing it in? I said, if I could do something different, I would have targeted a little bit more rather than just like a general communications degree. And so that's what she's pursuing. And from everything we're hearing from professors and grade wise, it's really a good match for her. And I love it because we can kind of tag team. We'll be out and about and talking maybe with people who aren't from a farm background, maybe in the suburbs. And we're able to really talk about what our culture and our jobs are like. And, we both have our own voice that we use to speak. Hers is different than mine, but it touches more people that way, I feel like.
Definitely. That's such a cool experience that you both have. You have that opportunity of living more, maybe not on a farm, but then connecting with farmers now and providing for so many people. I want to jump back into some of your recipes. I know I was looking and your chicken bacon ranch sliders look amazing. So I'm going to have to try that one. But do you have any favorite field meals that you really suggest for our viewers?
Well, I know sliders are always a go-to, and I've never met a person who doesn't like a slider. So just coming up with all sorts of variations of those are good. And surprisingly, when I can get people to stop and eat, something they don't need to eat with one hand, stir fries are one of my favorite because it's everything in one bowl. I've got the protein, I've got the starch, I've got the vegetables, so I can feel good about what I'm feeding them. And there's so many different ways you can make that.
Definitely. Or do you have any do you have any cooking tips for people that might be interested in like meal prepping for field meals?
I love doing freezer meals. So it's basically like everything that you need to make the meal, put in a bag, and then you pop it in the freezer for later. What's wonderful for us who live in the country where we don't have like maybe fresh produce or a grocery store besides Dollar General nearby is, we don't have those last minute crisis where, sometimes we won't know we're planting or we're harvesting until like I see a tractor roll out of the drive and it's like, oh boy, it's go time. So it's easy to have a stash in the freezer that I can just pull out and use.
Well, that's a great tip. I think a lot of people would benefit from putting some meals in the freezer for sure. I just want to ask another question about what would you say to someone? Obviously, you said you started this in 2016. What would you say to someone that's interested in maybe not doing exactly what you do, but building their own business, building something off of their experience in agriculture that's very public facing?
Yeah, I mean, social media is such a great tool. Like anything, it has some downfalls, but it really is a great way to spread your message, a way to put positivity out into the world and kind of share your story. So I think there's so many different platforms now, more than when I started in 2016, that you can kind of find something that matches your personality and style, no matter which one you use.
Yeah. And do you have anything else you want to share about your journey and how it's benefiting maybe farmers throughout Illinois and across the nation?
Yeah, I'm just so grateful to have stumbled upon this where I had a sense of need for community, and like the farm wives have been like down for it. They are just so fun. I've made some great connections. Even people in Illinois, but also throughout the US. And it's just been a great journey. I'm really happy that this is where I ended up.
Definitely. Well, we are too, because I'm going to suggest we make some of the meals here at Illinois Corn maybe for our next board meeting. Well, thank you so much, Deanne, for being here. We really appreciate it. And can't wait to try out some of these meals this planting season and then maybe in the fall as well.
That sounds perfect.
Well, Deanne, where can people go to learn more about your recipes?
I'm so glad you asked. You can find me at thisfarmgirlcooks.com, and I'm also under that on my social media as well.
Perfect. Well, I know I'm going to be heading to that website once again and going to suggest that some of our board members do too, and maybe we could have some of them at our next board meeting. So we really appreciate it and you being here today and sharing us more about your story.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Deanne, we're going to go ahead and go into our not to be corny section. So here's my joke of the day. Why did the chicken chef start a cooking show on the farm?
Why?
because it wanted to teach everyone the exact way how to cook.
But
This has been another episode of Illinois Corn TV, where we deliver insightful ag interviews positioning our Illinois farmers to grow. Stay tuned for more content every week, and be sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week.